You're from Kent originally.
I am originally from Kent, yes.
Have you lived anywhere else other than Kent?
I've lived in the Thanet area, which is also classed as Kent, but I've not been any other further than there, no.
What was it like growing up in Thanet? Because it's becoming quite fashionable now.
Growing up in Thanet was a bit different to obviously of what I would have imagined growing up in Maidstone would have been.
Right.
You know, there was a lot of shops open when I was growing up, to then when I was reaching my teenage years, a lot of the places had shut down, and as I was just talking about the Dreamland, they finally reopened Dreamland after the closure of the ride that was burnt down and a bigger disagreement they had about it. They finally opened that up, and everyone was all excited Dreamland's back, but it wasn't what I was told it used to be like, and the pictures I'd seen.
It used to be amazing,
You know, I heard so many good reports about it, then experiencing it myself when it's reopened, and it's not the same anymore. It's really gone downhill.
Ah. So what brought you back to Maidstone then?
Basically, all my family's in Maidstone, and my granddad sadly passed away of cancer.
Oh, sorry.
A couple of years ago, and obviously he was living in Maidstone, and that's when Mum came back to Maidstone, and then I not long followed after that, because I just had a rough life of being in the Thanet area. I was making the wrong decisions. I was getting involved in drugs, I was getting involved in gangs, I was breaking the law all the time. I'd walk around, I didn't care. People wanted to get mouthy to me, I'd shoot them and things like that. So I was making a bad decision for myself.
I can't imagine you being in gangs, funny enough. It must have changed quite a bit since then.
But obviously, you know, my dad said to me plenty of times when I spoke to him on the phone, my progress I've made to what I used to be like. I used to be this person where I wasn't polite. If I didn't like you, I'd tell you I didn't like you, and I wouldn't be calmly about my words neither. I was very aggressive towards people as well. I could just walk past someone and then end up getting into an argument with them because I didn't like the way they'd look at me, or even the way they were dressed. And at one point, it was the colour of their skin as well used to offend me.
Really?
Yeah. I had a lot of hate against a lot of people. I didn't really.
So you were racist at one time, basically.
I was racist at one time, yeah, because I never really understood like the difference between. Don't matter what colour skin you are, you're still human, you're still the same as us. Just because you've got a different colour skin doesn't make you any different. You are just like and you're entitled to anything just like us. Just because you've got a different colour skin, you're no different.
Where did the racism come from, do you know?
The racism come from because there was this one kid that I lived near on this estate in Margate. And he was the only coloured kid there, and he lived with white foster carers. He had a foster family there, but he was the only coloured kid on the estate and everything. And he was okay, but I didn't really understand nothing then, and it sort of got to the point where he seemed like a bully. So I turned around and said, well, instead of bullying me, you're in my country. Why don't you go back to your country and bully them in your country instead of bullying me in my country? So it started going down roads like that. Then it led to the point I'd get into disagreements and arguments, and then I listened to all the wrong people, got involved against all the hate against all the coloured people coming into our country, like back in the 90s where you used to have all them football gangs that used to hate all the coloured people. I used to watch all them sort of films, and one film I remember watching and I always swore by it was This Is England. And I watched that, and there was this and on that film there was this Jamaican guy that was on there, and then this white man ended up beating him to death just because of the colour of his skin. He had done nothing wrong. He'd said he is an English citizen. He was born in England. He wasn't born in Jamaica. He was born in England, but because his family generated from there, he had the coloured skin and everything, and he ended up getting beaten to death. And watching that, I grew a lot of hate on it. And I thought, do you know what, there is a point they're coming to our country, you know, taking our homes, taking our jobs, and all these suicide bombers that are coming in, the terrorists and things like that. And I grew a lot of hate on it. I never sat down until I was in my secondary school. And obviously we done in our RE lesson, we studied Gandhi, obviously one of the foreign men, and what he went through, where they were treated like slaves. They were slaves and they went through slavery, and we done a lot of study on all what was back like in them days. Obviously, us British people would treat you guys as slaves. Because of your colour of the skin and everything else, you're our slave. You will do what we tell you to do. And I sort of then had a sort of different seeing of everything else, because at the end of the day, no one deserves to be treated that way. But it doesn't matter what colour skin you are, to how tall you are, or what problems you've got. No person deserves to be treated in any sort of way like that.
Yeah, that's interesting that you've came to that conclusion, that realisation. In a way, yeah. And you grew up in foster homes, is that right?
Yes, I grew up in a foster home, and obviously that was an experience.
How was it? Good or bad?
Good and bad.
Right.
You know.
Tell me the good about being a foster kid.
Being a foster kid, the good parts is families that are willing to look after you.
Right.
That are unfortunate had to have kids of their own, some of them, but they're still willing to work under social services because they can still foster children. So to them, that's their foster child.
Yeah.
I had this lovely couple, they were in their 60s, and they did have a child of their own, but he sadly passed away. So that completely broke them, so they went into fostering and adoption. A couple of their children they looked after at a young age, they ended up adopting, but I was less fortunate of going to them at a young age and being adopted, so they fostered me. And they were a lovely, warm, welcoming family. They treated me with 100 of respect. You know, I didn't miss out on anything. If they got invited on a family holiday, we was invited to go with them. If they was invited to go to a family barbecue, we was invited with them, because to them, we're their family as well.
That sounds good. So that was a good experience. What were the bad then?
There was a couple of times I spent 3 months of constantly moving foster carers, because they just couldn't find a foster family that was stable enough to look after me. And then for 2 months of that, obviously I was with one foster family, and the experience was horrible. I was constantly shut in my room all the time. I had a bucket in my room that I had to go to the toilet in. I would wee in it and I'd poo in it. The only time I was allowed out of my bedroom was to go to school and to have dinner.
Really? I'm surprised they got chosen as foster parents.
Because at the time when they become foster carers, they were a loving family.
Right.
Because obviously they have adopted a couple of their previous foster children, and they were like, oh, but that's not like that. They're a lovely couple, they're a lovely family. They like to involve the family and the foster kids in with the family and everything else. So they saw a good part of it, but by the time everyone else had moved in there, they're all grown up and they've moved out, they've got their own families, they've got their lives to live, and yes, they pop by and visit, but when they come round and visit, you're welcome in. Right. We're allowed to come out of our room, we're allowed to socialise with everyone, same as when we used to have meetings with social services. Right. We was allowed to come out, and they put an act on that there was brilliant carers. But because us, and there was 3 of us in this in the foster family at the time, there's 3 of us.
Did you all get on?
Yeah, we all got on very well, and I was grateful to be able to go to the same school as all 3 of them, so we all got at the same taxi to school and everything, and we was too scared to say anything, we was too scared to open up, because we didn't know how to open up. Right. We didn't know who to go to speak about it, and what was best advice to have. And then it got to a point where we couldn't cope anymore, because the school was saying, you're getting rather skinny, and is everything okay at home? And then, you know, they bring in a nurse in to check us over, and then we finally break and we opened up, and then obviously, of course, police were involved, social services got called, and they lost their job, and we got taken away and got we got separated into a different family.
Was that difficult at that time, being separated?
It was difficult at the time, because of where we were so close with each other. We built such a good bond with each other, You know, our bedrooms were so close to each other, so it was like we had ways of communicating. You know, we used to sit there and write each other a note and shove it under the doors.
If there's anything you could say to the foster family that treated you badly, what would you, if you saw them, what would you say to them?
I'd say to them, why go to a job like that if you can't look after children? Why would you foster if you can't look after them?
Yeah, that's a fair enough point. Yeah, and what effect has it had on you, the you know, your whole time in care or foster care or whatever?
Separation anxiety. I hate being on my own.
Right.
Doesn't matter whether I make friends with someone, whether I'm in a relationship with someone, or whether it's my own family. I can't stand being on my own. I hate being on my own because I'm so used to not having anyone, but when I get someone, I don't want to let go.
Right, okay, I understand that. Are you in a relationship at the moment?
Yes, I am in a relationship at the moment, and obviously my partner, she lives in Hastings.
Right.
So obviously I live in Maidstone, but obviously we're arranging to see each other soon and obviously meet up and everything and just spend time with each other.
That's great that you've got someone. It's nice to feel that you've got somebody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the best. You've got to look on the bright side, I suppose, and that you are, you know, a survivor of that system, and you've got to just push forward, I think.
Exactly.
You know. But yeah, it's been lovely chatting with you. Thanks for telling us a bit of your story anyway.
That's all right. Thank you for talking to me.
My pleasure.